All right, so let's dive right in, I guess you could say, to something that's probably on everyone's mind these days, cybersecurity.
It's a big one.
It is. And we're looking at Delinea and their approach to user training for PAM.
Privileged access management.
Right, privileged access management. So we've got some really interesting material here, an article called Introduction to Delinea's Approach to PAM User Training.
By Bert Blevins.
Written by Bert Blevins. And,
Pretty well-known guy.
Yeah, big name in cybersecurity, written a ton of books. So really what we're going to unpack today is how Delinea is doing something a little bit different with user training, how they're approaching it.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're really looking at how to go beyond just the tech.
So not just the software.
Right,
Yeah.
because you can have the best software in the world, but if your users aren't trained properly,
Right.
you're still vulnerable. And Blevins really hits on that in this piece.
So what are they doing differently then?
Well, one of the things that they're really focusing on is the human element.
Yeah.
They're acknowledging that human error is still a major cause of security breaches.
So it's like having a super secure lock on your door, but leaving the key under the mat?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how strong your defenses are if someone accidentally gives away the keys to the kingdom.
So how is Delinea addressing this? How are they making sure that users are actually up to speed?
One of the things that stands out is their focus on customization. They tailor training programs to specific roles within an organization.
So it's not like one size fits all?
Not at all. They recognize that a system administrator needs different training than someone in marketing or sales.
That makes sense.
And it's not just about the content of the training either. It's about how it's delivered.
So how is it delivered?
They use a variety of methods, including e-learning videos, simulations, even in-person workshops. They really try to make it engaging and interactive.
So they're not just lecturing people about cybersecurity.
No,
Yeah.
they're getting them involved. They're making it relevant to their day-to-day jobs.
So it's like learning by doing, but for cybersecurity.
Exactly. And you know what else is interesting?
What's that?
They're really big on continuous learning. They recognize that the threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So they're constantly updating their training materials and adding new modules.
So it's not like you go through the training once and you're good to go.
Nope, you got to stay on top of it. And Delinea makes it easy to do that.
Now, I'm curious about those simulations you mentioned. Can you give me an example of what that might look like?
Sure. Let's say you're a system administrator and you get an email that looks like it's from a vendor, but it's actually a phishing attack.
Oh, I've gotten those before.
Yeah, we all have. Well, in a Delinea simulation, you might have to decide whether to click on a link or open an attachment. And depending on what you do, you might get different outcomes.
So it's like a choose your own adventure for cybersecurity.
Kind of, but with real world consequences. You learn from your mistakes without actually putting the organization at risk.
That's a great way to learn. It's like a safe space to mess up.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills either. They also have simulations that focus on things like social engineering and awareness.
So how to spot those phishing emails that you're talking about?
Right. And how to respond to suspicious requests. A lot of security breaches happen because someone was tricked into giving away sensitive information.
So it's not always about hacking into systems. It can be about hacking into people.
Exactly. And Delinea is trying to make sure that their users are prepared for both.
This is all really fascinating. It sounds like Delinea is taking a very holistic approach to user training.
They are. And I think it's really paying off. Their clients are seeing a real improvement in their security posture.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the author of this article, Bert Blevins.
Yeah, what a guy.
What's his take on all of this?
Well, he's clearly impressed with Delinea's approach. He sees it as a real game changer in the industry.
Why is that?
Well, he's a big believer in the importance of human factors in security. He understands that technology alone isn't enough. You have to have people who are trained and aware. And he sees Delinea as really leading the way in that area.
And he's got the credentials to back that up.
He does. He's been in the industry for decades. He's seen it all. So when he says something is a game changer, it's worth paying attention to.
Absolutely. So Delinea is not just throwing software at the problem. They're really investing in people.
Exactly. And that's what makes them stand out. They understand that security is ultimately a human problem.
And they're giving people the tools and the knowledge they need to solve it.
Right on. They're making security everyone's responsibility, not just the IT departments.
And that's a powerful message. It's not just about technology, it's about culture.
It is.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of security where everyone is aware of the risks and takes steps to mitigate them.
That's a great point. And it makes me think about something else. How does Delinea actually manage all this customization?
That's a good question,
Oh,
and one that we'll dig into a bit later.
okay. Sounds good.
But first,
Let's talk about how Delinea addresses another big challenge in cybersecurity.
keeping up with the constantly evolving threat landscape.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is. It's like trying to hit a moving target. It really is.
Yeah.
How do you even keep up?
Right, like you learn something and then boom, it's outdated.
Exactly. So how do they make sure that their training isn't obsolete the second it's released?
Right, like what's their secret sauce?
One of the things that Delinea really emphasizes is this idea of continuous learning, always staying ahead of the curve.
I like that, continuous learning. It sounds like a never-ending process.
It is, but they make it manageable.
Yeah.
They break it down into these bite-sized chunks.
Bite-sized chunks, what do you mean?
They call them micro-learning modules.
Micro-learning.
Yeah, basically these short, focused bursts of information that you can complete in just a few minutes.
So it's like cybersecurity snacking instead of a full meal.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's perfect for busy professionals who don't have hours to spend in a classroom.
Right, because who has time for that these days?
Exactly. So these micro-learning modules, they cover a wide range of topics, everything from the latest phishing techniques to new security features in Delinea's platform.
So it's like always having access to the latest intel
Yeah.
right at your fingertips.
Exactly. And they make it super accessible, too. They've got this really slick e-learning platform.
So you can just log in and learn whenever you have a few minutes.
Exactly. And they also have these virtual labs.
Virtual labs? Now what are those?
So it's basically like a safe space where you can experiment with Delinea's tools and features without worrying about breaking anything.
So kind of like a cybersecurity playground.
Exactly. You can try things out, you can make mistakes, you can learn from your mistakes, all in a risk-free environment.
That sounds awesome. I learn best by doing, so I can really see the value in that.
Yeah, it's super effective. And you know what else is cool? They actually integrate training directly into their PAM tools.
Wait, what do you mean?
So let's say you're about to access a sensitive system, right? Delinea might pop up a quick reminder about the company's security policies, or maybe even a mini training module.
So it's like having a little security guardian looking over your shoulder.
Exactly. Making sure that you're following the rules and staying on top of things.
That's brilliant. It's like they're building security awareness right into the workflow.
Exactly. Making it part of the everyday routine rather than something that you do once a year and then forget about.
Right. Because let's be honest, those annual security training sessions can be kind of a snooze fest.
Yeah, they can be. But Delinea's approach is much more engaging and interactive.
So it sounds like they're really hitting on all cylinders here. Customization, continuous learning, hands-on experience. What else is there?
Well, another important aspect is building a strong security culture within an organization.
Okay, now that's interesting. Because you can have all the tech in the world, but if people aren't actually taking security seriously, it's all for nothing.
Exactly. And that's where Delinea really shines. They go beyond just technical training.
So what do?
They help organizations create a culture where security is everyone's responsibility.
So it's not just the IT department's problem anymore.
Right. It's a shared responsibility. And Delinea provides organizations with all sorts of resources and tools to help them achieve this.
Like what?
Well, they have communication templates, awareness campaigns, leadership training programs, you name it. They're really committed to helping organizations embed security into their DNA.
Wow, it sounds like they're really going above and beyond.
They are. And, Blevins, he really emphasizes this in his article. He talks about how Delinea doesn't just tell organizations what to do, they actually help them do it.
So they're like a partner in security.
Exactly. They're not just a vendor. They're invested in the success of their clients.
Now that's impressive.
It is. And it's one of the things that sets them apart.
So we've talked about the why behind Delinea's approach to PAM user training. And we've touched on some of the how, but I'm curious to hear more about the specifics.
You want to get into the nitty-gritty?
Exactly. Give me some examples of how they actually put all of this into practice.
Okay, so one example that Blevins highlights is their use of real-world scenarios in their training programs.
Real-world scenarios.
Yeah, so they don't just lecture people about abstract concepts. They actually put them in situations where they have to apply what they've learned.
So it's like those simulations we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Like, let's say they're simulating a phishing attack.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Right. So users might have to identify a malicious email or a suspicious link, Or maybe figure out how to respond to a request for sensitive information.
And if they make the wrong choice.
They learn from their mistakes,
Right.
but in a safe environment.
Right. No harm done.
Exactly. And it's not just about reacting to threats either. They also have simulations that focus on proactive security measures,
Like what?
like how to create strong passwords, how to properly configure security settings, how to report suspicious activity, that kind of thing.
So it's a very well-rounded approach.
It is. They're trying to cover all the bases.
Now I have to ask, is all of this gamified?
Well, some of it is.
Really?
Yeah, they incorporate elements of game design into some of their training modules.
So like points and badges and leaderboards?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fun way to make the learning process more engaging. And it actually works. People learn better when they're having fun.
That's so cool. I never thought I'd hear the word cybersecurity and fun in the same sentence.
I know, right? But Delinea is proving that it's possible.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the positive aspects of Delinea's approach, but are there any potential drawbacks?
Well, some people might argue that all this customization and gamification could be a bit distracting.
I can see that.
They might say that it's taking away from the serious nature of cybersecurity.
Right, because at the end of the day, this is serious stuff.
It is. But I think Delinea does a good job of striking a balance.
So it's not all fun and games.
No. They make sure that the training is engaging but also effective.
And how do they measure that effectiveness?
They have robust assessment tools in place. They use quizzes and simulations and real-world performance data to track progress and make sure that their training is actually achieving its objectives.
So it's a data-driven approach?
Exactly. They're not just hoping for the best. They're actually measuring the results.
I like that. Shows that they're really committed to making a difference.
They are. And they're not afraid to adapt and improve their training based on the data.
So they're constantly iterating and evolving.
Exactly. Just like the threat landscape.
So we've talked about customization, continuous learning, real-world scenarios, gamification assessment tools. Anything else that stands out to you about their approach?
Well, one thing that I really appreciate is their emphasis on accessibility.
Accessibility.
Yeah. They make their training available in a variety of formats.
Yeah.
Online modules, videos, in-person workshops, whatever works best for the learner.
So they're catering to different learning styles.
Exactly. And they also offer training in multiple languages, which is essential for global organizations.
That's a great point, because cybersecurity is not just a local issue, it's a global one.
Exactly. And Delinea is making sure that everyone has access to the knowledge they need to protect themselves and their organizations.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the importance of building a strong security culture. How does Delinea actually help organizations achieve that?
Well, they provide organizations with a variety of resources and tools.
So it's not just about the training itself, it's about providing ongoing support and guidance.
Exactly. They offer things like communication templates, awareness campaigns, leadership training programs, things that help organizations integrate security into their everyday operations.
So they're not just giving organizations a fish, they're teaching them how to fish.
Exactly. And that's what makes Delinea such a valuable partner. They're not just interested in selling software, they're interested in helping organizations create a sustainable security culture.
Now that's what I call a win-win.
It is. And it's another example of how Delinea is going above and beyond to make a real difference in the world of cybersecurity.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about the author of the article we've been discussing, Bert Blevins.
Yeah, what an interesting guy.
He is. You mentioned earlier that he's a big name in cybersecurity, and he's clearly very passionate about this topic. What is it about his perspective that you find so insightful?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is his focus on the human element of cybersecurity.
The human element.
Yeah. He understands that security is not just about technology. It's about people.
So it's not just about firewalls and intrusion detection systems. It's about the people who are using those systems.
Exactly. And Blevins is really good at explaining why people make the mistakes they do and how we can create environments that encourage secure behavior.
So it's not just about telling people what to do. It's about understanding their motivations and helping them make the right choices.
Exactly. And Blevins is a master at communicating these concepts in a way that's both insightful and engaging.
That's so important because cybersecurity can be a really dry topic.
It can. But Blevins makes it come alive. He tells stories, he uses humor, he makes it relatable.
So he's like the cybersecurity storyteller.
I like that.
Yeah.
He is. He's the guy who could take a complex topic and make it understandable and even enjoyable.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Delinea's approach to user training is so effective, because they've clearly taken a page from Blevins' playbook.
Yeah, they're both focused on making cybersecurity more human-centered.
And that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, it's people who are going to make or break an organization's security posture.
I couldn't agree more. Technology can only take us so far. It's people who are the ultimate line of defense.
And Delinea is empowering those people to be the best defenders they can be.
Exactly. And Blevins is right there with them, cheering them on.
It's a powerful partnership, and one that's making a real difference in the world of cybersecurity.
I think so too. They're both committed to making the digital world a safer place.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Delinea's approach to PAM user training with some final thoughts and a question to leave you pondering. Okay, so we're back. And as we've been talking about Delinea's approach to user training, it really strikes me how much they emphasize this idea of shared responsibility when it comes to security.
Yeah, it's not just about having a dedicated security team,
Yeah.
Tucked away in some office somewhere.
Yeah.
It's about creating a culture where everyone in the organization feels a sense of ownership over security.
Right. It's like security is everyone's job.
Exactly. And Delinea really gets that. They're not just teaching people how to use their tools, they're teaching them how to think like security professionals.
To be more proactive.
Exactly. To spot those red flags, to know what to do when something seems fishy.
Speaking of phishing, I have to ask,
Yeah.
Is it realistic to expect everyone in an organization to become a cybersecurity expert?
Well, not everyone needs to be a hardcore hacker.
Yeah.
But everyone does need to have a basic understanding of the threats and how to protect themselves.
So it's about raising the security IQ of the entire organization.
Exactly. And that's where Delinea's approach really shines. The customization, the continuous learning, the focus on building a security culture. They're really trying to create a more secure environment from the ground up.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to Bert Blevins, the author of that article we've been discussing. He's clearly a big fan of Delinea's approach. What do you think it is about their approach that resonates so strongly with him?
Well, I think it's their shared belief in the power of education. Blevins is a big believer that knowledge is power, and that by empowering users with the right knowledge, we can make the digital world a much safer place.
So he sees Delinea as kind of a kindred spirit in that mission.
Absolutely. They're both fighting the good fight, trying to make cybersecurity more accessible to everyone.
And in a way, it's kind of ironic because we live in this world of incredibly advanced technology, but ultimately it all comes down to people.
Yeah, technology can only take us so far. It's people who are the weakest link, but it's also people who can be the strongest asset.
And that's a great point to end on. Delinea is providing the tools and the training, but it's up to each and every one of us to use those tools wisely and to be vigilant about security.
Couldn't agree more. Security is everyone's responsibility.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. If you had to distill Delinea's approach to user training down to one key principle, what would it be?
I would say it's this: security is a journey, not a destination.
I like that security is a journey, not a destination. It's something that we have to work at constantly and adapt to the ever-changing threat landscape.
Exactly. And it's a journey that we all need to take together. So let's support each other, let's share knowledge, and let's make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
Well said, Remy. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Delinea's approach to PAM user training. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay safe out there.